What's up, everybody? It is November 13th. We just killed a big buck today. And I say we because this is a team effort. This is a fun team effort. This is on our farms. I've got Kirk Martin with me today.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, what's up? How's it feel? How's it feel to have a big buck on the ground in a big pool of blood right in some beautiful food plottish stuff that we planted, and you've been after him. How's it feel?
It feels good. After hunting 4 or 5 days.
What do I do with my hands? It feels good.
It feels good. It feels really good. 4 or 5 days of hunting hard. Some long sets, but this morning felt a little bit different.
Okay, today felt different, y'all. November 13th. There's so many of you that have given up. Okay. Oh, that light's going crazy. Hit that switch right there on the left, the far left one. Yep, that's it. November 13th. When we woke up this morning was different. He was already at his blind. I was woke up with great anticipation because we had 2 days that was really rough and it was really hot. I know a lot of you out there are freaking out because you haven't killed that big buck and you're feeling the pressure. And you may have listened to the podcast and in the last week or so, and I've been trying to do a podcast every other day to give you as close to up-to-date information from Iowa and Indiana and Kentucky and right here in Illinois, mainly right here in Illinois. So between my farms and my friends or clients' farms, we're managing essentially and taking intel through cameras and through everybody in the field. Like right now, I'm not in the field because I'm tagged out on bucks, but I'm also driving by and watching cameras and taking inventory of what crops are still standing and driving through the kind of the outlying areas of where I think this rut like movement is happening, and then getting the reports from people like Kirk that are in the field. He's getting ready to go back home, which is fun, especially to have a tag on a deer that we're getting ready to cut up and cape and get all good. But he's not staying for gun season just because now we have all this food and the crops are just coming off. My farm that we have one big deer that we would hunt. My personal farm, we thought about even dropping in there this evening because the deer's just that cool and that you got to take advantage of the opportunity. We don't know if we get him killed or not, but when he is on his feet, he will daylight and he will be so killable. It's not even funny, but we haven't had pictures of him in a couple of days. We've been locked down. We're on lockdown, November 13th. But what does really lockdown mean to everybody? If you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Brackett. This is LandLife podcast because we love land. Everything, every critter, every fish, every little bitty rabbit and big whitetail and the crops that come off the land, everything has to go back to the land, right? And you either got to be a steward of the land, either somebody else's property, which is a lease, or something I manage or I help out on, or I do consults. And my dream was to own a piece of dirt and kill a big giant deer that I grew on that piece of dirt. And that's exactly what I've been able to accomplish this year. After 5 years of owning this piece of dirt, I've been able to grow all the crops that kept the deer fed. I've been able to put the blinds up and the stands up and the cameras up and plant the trees. And so we just decided to come up with this manly men's act like men, Christian based, siege of information and real talk and just information on deer and life and all of those things that we battle when we're looking at where to hunt, when to hunt, how to stay in the game mentally, how to talk to your bros and bro out and kind of go back to when you were 12, 13, 14, you were just getting into hunting and you dreamed so big. We're trying to figure out how to rechannel kind of that vibe and what was it to us when we were young, and then now as we're successful and we make money and we invest money in land and property and blinds and and taking the nephews out and him taking his kids out and those guys being a little grown now, and just having those opportunities is really kind of what LandLife's about. And so like this was probably, you said to me, one of your first animals that you went after that you didn't care how old it was, what it scored. It was just a really, what I talked about in probably podcast 2 or 3 for the year, that was a fancy animal. Had big giant splitters. We call him Splitty Magee. And we couldn't tell if he's 4 or 5 and honestly didn't care. He was one of the only deer that were doing deer things in the plots on several of the properties that you have and that we have access to, and really going after that animal and try and, catch him in daylight and then get a shot. That's all it went down to. And then how long did you sit? 2 days ago, you sat all day. This morning you had a couple hours in there. And then the last couple of days, it's been like, what do you do when there's no wind? And what are the deer doing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what comes down to it.
That's right.
But so what do you think we should tell everybody about what we're seeing this week? Because, for me, I am so deep in it sometimes that I don't know what everybody's wanting to hear about, like where the doe's at was the title of the podcast a couple of days ago. And then now we're in this rut where it is full. I would go on to say this is a full blown rut. I'm exhausted. You could probably tell it from the energy in the podcast, whatever. I'm exhausted from this rut, worrying about 70 degrees. And really my worry is keeping these deer alive and then being able to have information to tell everybody and to help my friends and to help you, like going, this is where I would go. We don't have a strong enough wind to go like into the food plots that we have, and not because they're not eating, but they can't be beat in some of these areas. And so I've been telling people to get in the woods and hunt deep in the woods, because they're just not out playing out in the fields or cornfields right now.
Yeah, I think it's almost like it's a surge. It's because it's hard to fight through those that day or two where maybe they're on lockdown or the bucks are with the doe, but you almost have to kind of fight through that, knowing that within a couple days somebody's going to release. Yep. Somebody's going to release, and I think that's what happened with these bucks this morning.
Yeah. So go back a couple days. We went from a year where you had the full moon. You had to leave here. I killed. You had to leave right when it was getting good. It started to get good. I killed again. Now I'm tagged out, and now it's started to get warm around the first, the 4th or 5th, right?
Yeah.
And I had predicted this year like the 8th through the 16th to be fire. Now, what does that mean? Because I know a lot of people would say, I don't have deer on my trail camera. I'm not seeing any movement when I'm in the woods. And I'm not seeing any does. Well, the temperatures were 60 degrees. Even the mornings had 0 wind. And you have to listen to the other podcast to premise this explanation of the molecular level that the deer were running around trying to smell the air. But really it's talked about like bird dogs and them using the wind. And without the wind, they can't really use it. So you were seeing these deer kind of into these grasses and the edges of the timber and the edges of these deeper, darker holes that we leave alone. And you were seeing this back and forth all morning up until what, 11, 12 o'clock?
Yeah, 11 o'clock.
And you were just seeing them pop out. Like
they just pop out and they had no interest in eating its food plot at all.
0. You saw maybe a couple does this morning for the first time.
Yeah, this morning felt a little different. The does were a little bit more relaxed. They came out and actually fed in the plot for a while until a buck harassed them. But they were a little more relaxed. This was the first morning in 5 days that they did that.
So 5 days, you guys, we've been paying attention, watching cameras, doing this. And here's the crazy part. I only saw back here at the house, I only saw 2 or 3 of those does maybe on the actual camera. And here you are watching them, giving me a report going, bucks are coming out. They're scooping up the does looking over their shoulder going, geez, man, I can't even get a bite to eat. And then they're off to running. But what I think that you're describing is that the does have, one, we've talked about how fat they are. Number 2, how they've been locked down on these hillsides and in these ditches and by water. And, when you talk about lockdown, I've told you that lockdown to me I think means something different than what a lot of whitetail people, I'm just going to use people instead of the word expert, but whitetail people that watch deer and really think they know what's going on. When it comes down to lockdown, I don't believe like the rest of even most of the guys that I followed, that I believe that they just they completely lock down and they stare at them and they just stand there with them. My friend Nathan Lee and myself have had very in-depth conversations that when the term lockdown comes on, we still believe that they have their little area. And we truly believe that those bucks will get up at night even, and they will take a cruise around, making sure that there's not a prettier girl, if there's not a standing estrus doe somewhere else, and they'll come immediately back to that doe that they've been with. And they've just kind of got these little rut areas, and that little rut area could be a half acre, and it could be a full acre, it could be 3 acres. And I think if we were to go after one of the big deer that we know where his area is, there's 2 that come to mind, which is this little bitty pond and this thicket above to the left and above to the right, and then down below it. He was there all last night. He came in and out of it for the last 3 days. So there's no way that deer is locked, but that deer is locked to a half acre of that pond. And I would say those girls are going in and out because they want bred just as bad as the bucks want to breed them when it gets this time of year. November 13th, November 8th through the 16th is when I told you that I thought this year would be good. If you're not in those little hotbeds and where that hot doe is, or a ton of does on your property, and it's just kind of snowballing, just wait it out. That's the mental game. But where we are is we know, because of hunting it over and over for over a decade, these spots just heat up. It's where the does know that they can kind of play hide and seek with the bucks. The bucks know to go there, and the little guys are satelliting all around the area. The 3 and 4 year olds are kind of getting in the game and out of the game. And then you've got these big old suckers that are doing most of the big breeding right now. And they're the ones standing there defending. And it would take a act of God to get that buck off of that doe. And sometimes that's exactly what happens when some little dude runs in there and disturbs everything, and she just gets spooked or squirts out of that area. And then that's the moment that you're like, I went from famine to feast, and you're like, it was the greatest day in the woods I've ever seen. And that's the reason we even do this, is for that one moment, that one morning when that doe shoots down through that little gauntlet, and then all heck breaks loose. And that is what happened to you today. After 3 days of sitting and almost getting an opportunity and seeing them at 80 and 90 yards today, I texted, 9:30 ish?
Yeah.
And you just said, hot doe,
yep,
bucks everywhere. And I set down the phone. I'm like, next time I hear from him, he's going to have a dead one.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was kind of calm in the morning. And then all of a sudden, the doe went through, a pretty big buck went through, a little buck went through, the buck I ended up shooting went through, and like 3 other little fellows come running through. And they just blew up everything, and then it was quiet. And then what I actually think happened is, I think the big buck, I think he probably got to the doe and ran the buck I ended up shooting off.
Okay.
And it was like
just
20
because
later.
You know that the one that you saw was even older and a bigger and a heavy. This is a deer we've never seen.
Yep.
We don't have a picture of him. And so he come through, and then the other guy was like, well, I'll just take this one. And he went off with this one. And you're getting into this, you're just getting into this phase where I think there's more does coming into estrus. And then I think you always tell me to dumb it down. You're like, dumb it down into estrus. What are you talking about, Chris? There's a hot doe. Well, think of it like this. If that doe was in estrus, and when I'm talking about estrus, I'm talking about like one day, I would guess it's 8 to 12 hours, but we could probably look up the facts. But it would, let's say 24 hours, that doe is going to stand and get bred. Do you think she still smells good the next 24 hours after she got bred for that peak time when she could, actually egg sperm, make baby deer, she still smells good to the 3-year-olds and the 4-year-olds and the year and a half olds and all these other bucks, right? So they get kind of confused and go, oh, well, she's going to stand for me. And you know what? Maybe she will, if he harasses her enough. And so you have to remember that all of these does are coming into ovulation and standing when they actually want bred. You even said that the other morning when you saw one bred 5 days ago, you saw it bred in the corn, that doe acted different, right? So I'm going to have him tell us about that morning in the standing corn that was all knocked down by deer and eaten. But what I want you guys to think about is, I want you to think about the fact that if you took 10 does and you had different colors on those 10 does, like they just, this is little reservoir dogs for you, Mr. White. So think Mrs. White and Mrs. Black and Mrs. Orange and so all these does are different color. Well, if every one of them, one of their cycles were just randomly given to them, which is like the wild, and out of those 10 does, you don't shoot any of those does this week. And those does are locked into, let's say, 200 acres. Those does are all going to come into estrus within a week of each other, pretty much. All right, standard. And so if she starts smelling good, let's say she smells good for 24 hours, and then she's standing for 24 hours, and then she still smells like sex and still smells like the rut and these other bucks, and she still smells like she's going to stand. How many of the bucks on your property, if you only have 2 mature ones, how many of them have participated in the rut enough to know that she's going to stand right now, bang? Or is she a little bit standing, or is she post standing, right? And I think that's where us as hunters are guessing. And so all we can do is guess, unless we got thermal drones and we're studying them in our backyard, whatever. But you got to kind of think of it like this when you're like, oh, I just had a hot doe. What was she hot? Is she coming into standing estrus, which is the good stuff, guys? You're coming home on your anniversary, Valentine's Day. You just gave your wife a diamond ring and the kids are gone and whatever, like, it's the day, right? And she's going to be super romantic. And then there's times where it's like, ooh, the kids are gone. Oh, you have candles lit. Oh. But hey, we know what we're talking about without getting too crazy here. Or is it after? It's like, well, she was real nice to me last night. Is she going to be nice to me again? Really, those are the questions. And so, is the hot doe in your woods? Is the hot doe there standing estrus? Like, there's a difference between standing estrus and watching these other bucks run around. So I say that to say, I witnessed it. Breaking news 4 days ago. East wind. First time we were into that stand all year. Standing corn that looks like pretty much you cut 1,000 raccoons loose on 10 acres of corn in this corner. That has to do with our CRP and where they come out, but we have to get this east wind to hunt it. So you go in there. Kurt goes in there. He's sitting in a ladder stand. We've got a great wind for these bedding areas that are in front of him, and it's just this smoking hot corner of this transfer from water, bedding, fingers of timber, set aside grass, just like 5 or 6 foot tall weeds and overgrown stuff, out to this standing cornfield that still hasn't been picked. So he sneaks in there. He gets in there. We just started getting pictures of deer kind of coming out the edges, but we didn't want to invade. He gets in there. Sun comes up. Tell us what happens next, because it happened fast, right? That first hour.
Yeah, first hour, sitting there, had good wind, and I saw a doe pop out of the switchgrass. And, of course, right behind her was like a 6 or 7 year old. It's a buck we've been watching, but he's just a big bully buck, got a big Y on the side.
He was there last year.
Yeah, he was at the same spot last year. And he came in, but she had a different, she didn't have that frantic look on her face, or the way she was moving around. And right away I was like, man, something seems different.
And
with this
you've
doe.
watched, and you've hunted Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, and your whole life back in PA and Maryland and out east. So you've seen does and deer do everything, guys that are listening out east. You've seen them do all this stuff just like they do back home. They act the same out here. And you would have recognized this as a different doe behavior anywhere on the planet.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, all of a sudden there was another buck.
Okay.
And another buck. And it ended up being 4 bucks there with her.
Crazy.
But the big bully buck, he was in charge, and he wouldn't let her get more than about 5 feet from him.
And how far did he let the other bucks get? So she was 5 foot and he was just stuck on her, even though they're on her feet, because they're locked down. I think people see a deer on the side of the road and he's staring at her and literally won't move for a car until you get in and bump the doe and he goes where she goes. You're talking about this is happening, locked down, him with her, but they're in a standing cornfield that you can see. Mm-hmm. And that he never let her get, you said 5 feet, 5 yards.
5-10 feet away from her. And the other bucks would try to come in. And they were actively trying to pursue her and push her out of that corn.
Either bump her, scare her, something, so the chase get on, so he could maybe lose her and they could slip in to breed her.
Yeah, and he wouldn't let him. Every time a buck came in, he would turn, he'd run him off, but she wouldn't ever run away.
She didn't want to run away from the man.
Yeah.
Like he was the man out of that group.
Yep. And I think she knew it. And something interesting you said a little bit ago that I think it maybe not always understood is you think these does run around and they get bred when they're too tired, or this buck is somehow smarter than her and he pins her
he beats her into submission.
And I don't think that's it at all. It's you, and you said it was when she's ready to be bred.
Yeah.
And when she walked in there, something felt different. She acted different. She wasn't frantic, and she let him breed her once. And
you got to actually see him get on her back and breed her right there.
Yeah. And the other bucks kept trying to come in even after that happened. And then he bred her again, like maybe a minute and a half later, and bred her again. And the other bucks were all there. This all happened within like 35 yards.
Those creepers.
They stood there and watched.
Those they were creepers, guys. They were creeping on this whole show going on. Now, envision that. And this is where I think, the Dr. Alzheimer or whatever, the deer guy. Charles. Yeah. Rest in peace. But that dude, he probably did the only dream that I haven't. He would curl up in a sleeping bag and go sleep with his bucks out back, and like, that is the only guy that we could call him on the phone and he could tell us. But I know some of our deer bredder buddies or whatever across the country, the guy that does aftershock and I could ask them and they would probably be able to tell us. But I think when you start paying attention to that and you have that experience one morning, one day, it was famine before that, and then all of a sudden feast. He wasn't the one you wanted to shoot. He didn't have if you guys been listening to the podcast, it's about a fancy buck. It might not be the oldest buck, but it's about a fancy buck. We killed a fancy buck today, and this deer just wasn't a fancy buck. He's a big bully buck. And so this big bully, this older animal that she felt like, hey, he is the man, and I'm going to let this alpha male breed me. And then, like, how long does she stay in estrus? Because I know that we know information like he'll breed her, and then sometimes when they're in the woods and in the thickets or whatever, he'll be off fighting another buck, and another like 1.5 old or 2.5-year-old will get on her back and he'll breed her. And a lot of those twins and triplets have different fathers.
Well, and something that happened after that, I don't even think I told you this, was that all happened. They kind of disappeared into this 90-acre field of corn. They all kind of disappeared. The other little satellite bucks left. And like an hour later, there was 2 different smaller bucks came through, and they came past where that had happened, and they stopped on a dime and went and followed right where he and her had left, and went into the 90, and they were, and this is an hour later.
That's incredible. And so you got to see what I think is like the golden moment of standing doe, smell, molecular level of, if you listen to the other podcasts, molecular level of what is going on. And that stuff, that's the funny part. If it rains, how long does that scent stay there? You're talking about doe vaginal fluid, buck semen, and you're talking about this smell of pee and all this rut and these glands and all of this stuff in this area, in this standing corn. How long does that scent stay there? I mean, real stuff. Like when that happens, how do you not sit there all day? Yeah, Kirk, why didn't you sit there all day?
That's a good question.
I got cold. I don't think you planned for that morning.
No,
That's what happened. You had the east wind. You're like, I'll be good. And then I think that happened, and you came back, and I'm like, are you nuts? I would have gone and sat in a deer suit in the middle of the corn, dude, on a chair, on a big orange red chair. I'd have just sat there in the corn because I don't think they would have cared. I really think they would have been in that zombie land. But that happened, I think 4 days ago.
Yeah, 4 days ago.
4 days ago. And so this is all happening, you guys, in a, I don't know, 30-acre block. So in 30 acres, all these deer are this is happening. And then later that night, you hunted the other side of that, and you had deer all over. And then more does are coming in. And so I think that's kind of our point of what's going on, you guys. That was 4 days ago. And if you took that doe and those 6 or 7 bucks that you saw, and you put them in this kind of solar system nucleus around this activity of this doe being 4 days ago, and then having these 6 or 7 bucks and having that happen in a cornfield and disappear into a cornfield, how long are those bucks going to stay in that cornfield? Because that's real easy to determine. That's real easy to determine that those deer, it's real. You could determine that I don't have any deer on my farm because half your bucks on that whole 50 or 60 acres that you're hunting are in one solar system.
Yep.
Revolving around the nucleus, revolving around one doe
Yep.
for the next how long? I'm not a deer scientist. I'm a deer killer, and I'm a watcher and a viewer, and I continue to keep learning. But all I do is try to explain and go over stuff with you guys here on LandLife. And so if that's happening, how long did that happen? Because is it 48 hours? Did half the stupid bucks end up hanging around, and the big boy went on to another doe, and then the whole cycle kind of started over again? If he found in that doe standing, and then those bucks finally went over there to that, and this was happening. And how often is that happening out there? So I say that to encourage everybody. That was 4 days ago. The next day, bucks chasing does, and then downwind, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a ton of 2 and 3-year-olds, all revolving around a 5-acre piece of timber that we call the ditch, right? And this ditch, and they were all downwind of it, and they were as fast as they could run around that ditch. They were there. And if you're not on that spot, you would think that there wasn't a deer in the world. And then from 11 o'clock till about 2:30.
Yep. Nothing.
The hottest parts of the day. I don't know what the red moon would say, that they say that the deer follow. I always call Nathan Lee. He's all into the red moon, and I believe it, but I don't want to be swayed by what my feelings are and my information that I'm taking in. It's kind of fun to check and see how much they correlate. I'm not like Mark Jury. I don't have 9,000 pictures from this year correlated with the last 20 years of pictures. It's not like that for me. I just am kind of taking what's happening and knowing my properties or my consulting or client pieces, and then, going through that. So if I take anything away from the 11th and 12th, they were really locked down days. I did not see many deer on Facebook or Instagram that had hit the dirt. I don't think they were good days for travel at all. But you know what? They're in the rearview mirror. They're behind us. So let's look forward. So the 13th today is the first day that we feel that they kind of came off lockdown and they kind of got a little more frenzied. And so if you listen and hear me talk about when to call, now's the time to call. And I know I have a clip where I told people that they shouldn't be calling, and they shouldn't have been, because it hadn't frenzied up and got frothy and just but now the deer are, how would you explain what you're seeing out there in the woods when you're in these little areas that have all of the deer? They are fully engulfed in what this is called as the rut. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's just a build, it almost seems like, as I said, the last 4 or 5 days, you could almost see it coming, where, they were relaxed, a little frenzied. They just kept building. And this morning when I ended up shooting the deer that I shot, I snort wheezed at him, which I hadn't never.
Oh yeah. So tell me about that. Do you guys have heard about me, heard me calling? I love to snort wheeze. I don't think a lot of people understand just the kind of the fun, and how to have fun with it and understand it. And then, tell us the story about, one, that you've, how'd you get the confidence to snort wheeze at a deer?
Well,
because that's a fun story.
So Chris has been telling me for years, and we it's funny, we sit here at night and we get to talking about whatever, and we get to talking about snort wheeze and how it should be done. And the first time he told me how to do it, I couldn't do it. I didn't realize that you almost have spit flying out your mouth.
Yeah.
So back home when I'm driving around in my truck, if anybody ever actually saw me, they probably think I'm losing my mind.
Right.
But I've been practicing snort wheezing in my truck for quite a while now.
And it kind of has that, I think if you Googled, there's some really good stuff out there on YouTube that actually has deer doing it. And if you can replicate that, you don't have to be perfect at the cadence. Well, I would say it's probably more the cadence or how it's done than it is really like perfection. It's not about perfection. It's about aggression. It's about like this first thing that they hear this, but they're sucking in. They're going, they're sucking it in, but it almost, to us, it's easier to make it when you just, you got this first, and then after that, you just kind of got this slow push where they're just kind of pushing this air out, where they're just kind of, how do you describe it? I think they're sucking in, like they're sucking in, but for us, it's just a very slow release of vibrating. Like for us, it's the teeth against the lips. And that was the key to you being able to do it. That's the part you never got. Like the first part, like you could do that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, exactly.
You just couldn't get kind of that lifelike, sound. And that's what you've been practicing all up for this moment today, when it was like a last ditch effort. You'd watched this buck 5 or 6 times before, frenzied, go back and forth, and he was just out of range. And today he cut across, and you did what? You finally saw him.
He was about 100 yards. And actually he had a doe had went through. So there was a doe there. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work, and he acted like he's pretty interested in hers. I grunted at him first, and he snapped his head around. And I thought, well, I'll try this. I snort wheezed at him, but I was pretty tentative with it because I thought, I don't want. I'm going to do it too loud. He's going to run away.
Yeah.
And he snapped his head around a little bit, and he fed a little bit, and then he acted like he was going to leave again. I was like, well, I got nothing to lose here, so I really snort wheezed hard and loud.
Was he thinking about it more than like, I'm going to? That I'm eating? Like when he put his head down, was he more like posturing, kind of relaxing to see it? Like, now that you think back, maybe he wasn't eating. Was he smelling her, or he was kind of thinking about it maybe?
Well, he was watching her pretty hard. She was in the thicket.
Okay.
And he kept looking at her, and I would grunt, and he would look at me, and then he'd take a step or two toward me, and then he'd go toward her. I think he was really torn on what to do.
Right.
And, finally, like I said, on the really aggressive one, it really got him.
It was kitchen sink last of the moment. You're like, I need to just give it.
I thought he's leaving. And he snapped his head around, kind of laid his ears back. pawed at the ground,
awesome,
and started walking. He started walking right to me, and I ended up shooting.
unbelievable.
So it was incredible.
And the shot actually went in, and he must have moved a little bit because he just was so high energy. He moved a little bit. The broadhead went in, and the deer just completely dropped, and it severed everything. Like, we're not sponsored, but the rage that we shoot, the ones without the collar or with the collar. I want the Rage Extremes with the collar. He shoots the tripans, but if you guys have Rage Extremes out there, send them. I'll buy them. I'll buy them from you. I'll trade you something cool. But you hit him, and it hit him like not in the shoulder, but kind of sideways of the shoulder, and ran his body, and he just fell over, and that was it. There was just blood everywhere.
Yeah, he never moved.
And this deer was run down pretty good. On October 29th, we saw him already chasing doe since the 29th of October. And here we are 2 weeks later, and he is still running like crazy. And so you snort wheezed him. He came. At this point, you said it's now or never. He stopped, shot him, killed him. And so we got a tag on a buck this morning. We had another one where about an hour before that, I had a buddy that had a picture on one farm of a deer he wanted to hunt, and he was on another farm and got that picture of that buck, and he just knew that he couldn't kill that buck 5 miles away. So he got down, went over to this other farm, and just made a move on this other buck that he wanted to kill. And this buck was on this farm, and he just got in the woods and got to a creek where these deer are running a lot, and it's just really hot. So they're kind of in and around creeks and the thick brush around those creeks. And he actually got an arrow and a big boy today. I haven't even got a real good picture of it, but that was 2 deer on November 13th. And I think the next 3 or 4 days, man, I know till at least the 16th going to be really good. The next 3 or 4 days. But it's hot out, right? I mean, like, it's going to be hot. It's 60 degrees. Yeah. What is it? Friday? Friday. What day is that? Friday. The date on that. Is that close? That's the 16th-ish, right? Yeah. 16th to 17th. You've got a little cooler temperature going, but hey.
17th is Friday.
17th is Friday. 17th is supposed to get a little cooler. But here's what I have to tell you out of all this whole conversation, it gets back to this. If you feel the pressure that I haven't got that big buck, I haven't seen that rutting activity, I haven't had my deer experience that I, lust for all year, I haven't got to have those experiences, I haven't seen one big mature whitetail, all I've seen is little ones, Uncle Bobby's going to tell you right now that the good stuff isn't even here yet. And you have to think like that. And Kirk always says, when he gets a little like, what are we doing something wrong? And are we supposed to be? And I'm like, well, if you want to kill a certain big deer, and that big deer lives on one part of the farm, you have to hunt that deer and know that you may go home without a deer. But if you want that big giant deer, you have to hunt where that deer is, and you have to spend as much time in that stand and those stands on that side of the property. But if you're just wanting to get in the activity and shoot a nice deer, you got to go where those areas are and then just hunt them. And then you have to know that the good stuff is yet to come. When Jeff Lindsay likes my post this morning, he had to be in a tree, probably eating a little Debbie treat somewhere in Iowa, probably. He could be at his farm in Illinois, but when Jeff likes my post today that says, I've killed more big deer between the 13th and the 18th in that 5-day period right there, I've killed most of the big deer in my life. My mega giants have been between the 13th and the 15th. It's after the rut for rookies, which is like right now when it's just, you get in there and you just mix it up and you spend as much time as you can in the woods and have that fun. And I love doing that. You've got the kind of the pre-rut, which is a very calculated type enter and exit, because they're living really close to the where their bedroom is and their scrapes are, and you got to be real slick to get in there. And then as you get early in the season, when you have all the leaves on and you've got early season in October, you have to even be even slicker to get away with the wind and the thermals and the stuff going on. And so those are very calculated, strategic people that love and capitalize on that October and then into November 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then you get into this crazy rut for rookies is what I call it. And it's just fun. You have to wear these different hats, even if they're as cool as this hat right here, Kirk. You have to wear, like, this is the fun hat. If this hat represents the rut for rookies, this is the fun hat. Okay. And then I'll get very military-esque with this hat. And this hat is very calculated in October. Okay. And then when you get past November 13th, I think you can put on this other hat, which is like those are for like the grinders, man. Like right now, the 13th through the 18th, these are for all the guys that didn't settle for just some little buck and shot it to fill their tag. They didn't just blow their farm out because they thought they needed to be hunting all of October and all of the rut and all of everything. And they've lost their mind. They're upset. They're stressed out. They're all this stuff. The guys that have made it through that gauntlet of that mind dulling, pain, suffering, pissed because it's 70 degrees, all this stuff that truly breaks us as men hunting, women hunting, it breaks us, man. And it's you're vulnerable. It's tough to do to make it through to this point. And now you're November 13th to the 18th. And right now is when the games begin. You're about ready to, even the playing field. You're about ready. I got to put on my cool hat. You're about ready to, even the playing field, it's coming into Illinois gun season Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And if you've made it this long, man, wait for the big boy. Try some different strategies. Know that that's one of the reasons that I feel that the gun season is in middle of November, because it's almost like a relief going, I ain't got to get them 30 yards with my bow anymore. I get to actually reach out and touch them. It doesn't mean go slaughter them because you just got beat for the last 30 days or 45 days. But I do believe that it's just another way to be out there, whether you're a gun hunter, a bow hunter, a crossbow hunter, or whatever it is. So I really think, guys, encouraging is if your farm is set up and you know your farm and you've watched these deer and you still have big deer that haven't shown up yet, this 13th to 18th, you're going to see deer show up that you haven't seen all year long. I'm talking about tonight. I'll bet you we get pictures of at least 1 or 2 bucks we haven't had pictures of all year. Well, I know that'll happen because we're getting our corn picked today. The next 2 or 3 days, the rest of our corn's getting picked off of our farm. And we're going to have deer that have been literally living in and around that corn that are now going to show up, and they're going to go to different parts of their fields and farms. And guys, you may not know about one cornfield in the middle of a 1,000-acre block that you're hunting that's been holding all the deer, or you got neighbors like us that haven't hunted their properties hard yet, and they haven't hunted hard at all, and they may be tagged out, or they may have a standing bean or cornfield. And then once these things get cut, these big bucks go back to these areas that they went from the years past, and you're going to have incredible, later rut. And this is when you go ahead and can predict a little bit more movement, as the weather will probably get cold. Cross our fingers. Even Thanksgiving week. I think Thanksgiving week will be really incredible as well. So if I can give you any words of encouragement, would be just do whatever you have to keep hunting and keep at it and have fun and kind of pace yourself and just kind of get on you don't have to do the all day sets. If you're feeling it, do it. But if it's killing you, don't do it. Don't do it. You got to say anything to that, buddy?
Yeah, I think that's just relax and have fun, and that's something I've tried to do this year because it can be. We put all this stress on ourselves for some
True.
reason to go out and shoot a deer,
Mm-hmm.
and when you really think about that, it's kind of crazy. But it's something we love it. We love hunting, but
we don't have a needle in our arm, man, and we're not addicts about something that's uncontrollable. Right. This is controllable. This is a fun thing. Deer are silly, but we get really obsessed.
And I think that's what you need to remember is it's about enjoying God's creation, being out there, sitting still, watching the squirrels, watching the bird. I had a hawk fly in today and landed on top of the blind turtle. He was on top. I could hear him. But that's what it's about. Enjoy it.
I think people need to really know that we're not, even us that have really good farms and that we've put everything and money and blood and sweat and tears in there. A successful day is not getting busted and seeing deer do deer stuff. And last couple of days, you've seen 10 bucks that are not shooters do deer stuff in front of you, everything from make scrapes to whatever. And that's the stuff. If you don't smile through them and you're pissed because you didn't see the big buck, but you saw these deer do that, like, how can you go home and relish in that and go like, dude, it's kind of like a hunting TV show. If you got all the B-roll from the whole week of watching all the fun stuff or whatever happened, there comes to a point when you're like, I know sooner or later. I don't even care. I don't need to see the buck for very long. I just need a big one to do what happened today. Come out, snort, wheeze at him, come in, shoot him, and then call your buddy. Yep. Like, because you got to think of it as a TV show. When we filmed TV shows, I went someplace for a week or I hunted here for a week, kind of in my brain. It was like, oh, I got a pretty squirrel. I got a black one and I got a white one. He's doing this and a hawk landed on my blind. And I said a bunch of funny things and we filmed and we ate sandwiches and we pumped gas and we did all the stuff. And this buck ran in and he did a scrape. And you have all these pretty things happen that tells the story. And then really all you need is you need dessert. You need dessert to kick it off and say, you know what, tonight was a great night. And then that dessert is that one shot. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you know your ranges. Make sure you know that front end of that deer is going to duck. Make sure you're putting them in the back of the ribs where those lungs are bigger, and that you're just prepared for that shot, man. And if you hit them in the shoulder, guys, you're going to get 1 inch to 3 inches of penetration. And if you just look for them and make sure that something crazy didn't happen, they're dead, and you're going to get a picture of that deer if he lives there within 3 to 5 days. Because I'm telling you that because I've dealt with so many messages right now about these guys doing all this stuff, listen to the podcast, whatever, and then they'll be like, I just shot him in the shoulder. And I'm like, if you just went in there, tracked him up, went to the end of the blood and came back, that buck's going to be back within 3 to 5 days. Because right now they don't care. They're getting stabbed by other bucks and they're getting hit by cars and they're still just going on about their life. These are true beasts, man. And Uncle Ted would say, long live the beast. And November 13th, it's a good day. It's a good day. Tomorrow's going to be better. And I think they're just going to keep getting better. But if it's hot, man, go hunt for 3 hours. Get out of there. Come back for 3 hours. Just be out in the woods right now. Don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. Don't just shoot one just to shoot one. Don't lose heart. Anything else we got to hit on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Herman Brothers Realty is the company that I work for. I sell land in Illinois. I'm a land broker. Kirk started out as one of my clients for Game Changers Land Management, which is one of my other companies. I do consults and I make your farm into a whitetail wonderland, pretty much. And I'll tell you one thing that I know to be true in this world, that it's a lot easier to make a client a friend than it is a friend a client. And that is true in this situation where you had a farm that you thought you overpaid for, and we just made it into more than what you paid for it. And we did that through, my vision for what you said, hey man, I've done some stuff here. Let's make this as cool as we can. And we did. We took what we had and made it incredible. And we started to get these deer to where they were getting there. And then at the same time, little things like your question to me was, coming from Pennsylvania for a week of hunting twice a year, 3 times a year, can I invade this property and get the caliber of whitetail I was looking for. And you straight up asked me, if we get on this farm and this is not made for me, tell me. And that's kind of how our relationship started, was like, when you're going in there to pull cameras and go be excited that you've been looking for all year. And I'm like, you can't make it through this farm and get out of it and then hunt it all week without wrecking it for that week, which is kind of like I always talk about my puddle. If you go and stir that mud up on that puddle, it's going to take a week to get back. And you may only have that a couple times for these big mature deer. They may only put up with it one time. And we just decided that we would keep moving down the line and find a farm that was easy to pick at the edges. And that's what we've kind of been training. I've been training you as going, these are what we look at. Andrew, the same way, what farm to look at. So when you guys think of me being a land consultant, or just buying a farm with me as your agent, or if you're buying Kentucky or wherever, we'll be a team. I'll get paid from the agent that we pick that's best for you. But when we look at a farm, I come and do a consult on people's property, if they want to ask me, is this farm the best for me and my family, or me and my boys, to kill 3 or 4 or 5-year-old deer a year? And if it's not, help me, teach me what to look for. And that's really where I think that I'm best suited at what I do, is to find what you want and then fine tune a farm, even if it's not that one, to get you what you want, even if it takes a couple years. Yeah. And that's what I would say. If you're out there listening and you want to be on my team, you've got 3 options. We talked about it last night. 1, top of the line, we go buy a farm. I get paid when you guys buy farms. Number 2, I can come to your place and do a consult, boots on the ground, which is 1, I'm either teaching you, helping you learn what to look for so you can go and hunt every lease and just be more educated as you go on through your hunting career. Also, somebody that has the farm that they love, they've had great success, and they just want to bring their level up. I can easily do that because I have my own farm, and I love my farm, and I have put blood, sweat, and tears to make it the prettiest 100 acres you ever seen in this world, and Airbnb my farmhouse and put the pond behind there to bankroll and pay for my property all year long. And the clients have such a great time staying there, and everybody wins. So I help you with that. And then on the smallest scale, which is I believe that it's affordable. And I think everybody that's spending money to improve their farm or their hunting or their habitat all would love to have an Uncle Bubby or a big brother to ask that's a complete whitetail psychopath, and eats, sleeps, and breathes whitetails and habitat and land, that they can go on whitetaillandlife.com, which is my page, and you can book for me to talk to you on every Wednesday, or just message us whenever you want. I think it's like $350, and we go through your property, we screen share, and I help you make a move on a bigger deer, or what to do with this coming gun season, or how you can improve your property. And we do that all throughout the year. And so I just want to thank Herman Brothers Realty and Herman Brothers Fishery, my guys that I work with, for helping me buy this equipment and get this to you in information, and continue to do it. They're not going to take this away from me. This is my voice. This is the greatest part about America still, is the freedom to have a voice. And here, we're just blessed to have a savior that allows us to just hand it all over to him when we're sinful and we hate, and and if we just persevere through the word, through the gospel, that we can find a way. Because if I'd have told you after my life changed courses that I would be here enjoying the heck out of a bunch of lights and talking with my friends and cool backgrounds and doing what I love, I found my passion and my love again through filming this and through teaching people and hearing from you, and going to our Facebook on Chris Brackett's LandLife and Instagram on Chris Brackett's LandLife. And I want to hear from you. I want to help you. I want to teach you. I want the haters to see that I didn't move the mountain, that Yahweh and Jesus did, and allowed it for my soul and saved my life. And now I do what I love. And so we'll just keep doing this. So I really appreciate you. I appreciate you, Kirk, for being here.
Yeah, man. It's always a good time.
So let's go skin out your buck and go get a good dinner. Like good dinner. I don't know. Should we have steak? Should we go get fish house
maybe
or something?
Seafood tonight.
Seafood. All right, y'all. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Do not let yourself down. Stay in it. Figure out what the next week looks to you. Hunt 2 hours every morning. Hunt 2 hours every evening. Whenever you can get off work, but don't lose that thing that you love about hunting. Don't let it cloud it. Don't let it be a big buck or a whatever. Just be out there and be in that sacrifice. And for the love of Pete, the trail cameras are lying. They're lying to you. They're truly out of 50 deer that you've seen in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
10
at the most.
At the most. The trail cameras are lying to you. Just go out there in the woods, have fun, sit on the edge of the field. It doesn't matter. Just be out there. Love y'all. Peace out.